A week ago, my family and I were in Falmouth, Massachusetts. We enjoyed some time away with Jeff's family in the beautiful and quaint Cape Cod town. For all save but one of the last 11 years, we've enjoyed an annual family gathering on the Cape. It was a trip that Jeff's grandmother, Helen Stein of blessed memory, started so that all the cousins and the generations of the family living spread across the country could get to know one another, see one another, reconnect annually, and build lasting relationships. It is, without doubt, one of the most impactful and special parts of Helen's legacy. So this summer, 14 of us gathered in our happy place, stayed all together in a beautiful home, played billiards and board games, swam in the pool, went to the beach, tried many of the local ice cream shops, shopped and ate delicious family dinners around the large family dining room table each night. It is truly as sweet and wonderful as it sounds. Among the most touching moments was a week ago, last Friday night. After a fabulous dinner featuring delicacies fresh from the ocean, we sat together to play a last round of taboo before dispersing to get packed and ready for departure the following morning. It happened to be the night of Jeff's grandfather's yahrzeit. Somebody brought the yahrzeit candle into the family room where we were sitting, and we spent time intentionally remembering Grandpa and together expressed thanks and appreciation out loud for all he and Grandma did throughout their lives that ultimately allowed them to create and endow this family trip. Just that morning, Jeff had made pancakes using his grandpa's recipe, bringing the taste of family Sunday morning breakfast that Grandpa had created so many years ago to everyone's palate. Members of the family told stories and remembered sweet gestures of love and support, times of playfulness and jokes, and we paid tribute to the commitment of family love and togetherness they modeled in their actions and with their resources. So much of those summer Cape Cod family visits have now become a tradition. Things we look forward to, things that are the same year after year after year. From the food items we purchase, we must have those terrible artificial orange cheese balls that can be tossed into the air by one person and caught in the mouth of someone else, to the menus that each family prepares for their night in the cooking rotation. I suggested this year, instead of making my chocolate cream pie, that I could bake something else, something better. Blasphemy! No! Even the sweatshirt shopping trip with my mother-in-law, when she treats the kids to new hoodies, hats, or sweatpants that they'll wear all year long, powerfully we remember the time that we spend together. It is clear that as important as the time we spend together in the experience of our being together, so is the re-engaging and the retelling of what we've always done when we are together, and perhaps even more importantly, when we're apart during the year. This phenomena of ritual, telling, and retelling stories is something that we're engaged in all the time, whether we're aware of it or not. Think about when something happens and we return home from a long day. I imagine you've often said, boy, I have a story to tell you, or did I tell you the story about what happened to me today? We retell our stories time and time again, tweaking the information in our presentation to gain our listeners' attention, building on the experience we got from already having told the story, that same story, times before. Maybe there was a long, boring part where we lost our listener last time, or perhaps it was not dramatic enough to get the response we desired. This is exactly what happens in this week's Torah portion. This Shabbat, we begin the book of Deuteronomy. When we completed the book of Numbers, the people finished wandering and were about to enter the land which God had promised. We expect to read about the people entering the land, but we do not. Instead, we get a retelling of the wandering. The book of Deuteronomy is made up of farewell speeches Moses offers to the people. So, why does our last book of the Torah open with a retelling of the wandering through the desert? Well, before attempting to answer this question, there's an important element to recognize. In this retelling, in Deuteronomy, the facts are not the same as we have read in earlier books of the Torah. While we get the same major outcomes, The causes and circumstances of these events are changed and differ here in Deuteronomy. I'll give you a couple examples. In Deuteronomy, we read that the judicial system develops because Moses is overwhelmed. Well, that's true, but it's only part of the story. Earlier in the Torah, Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, observed what Moses was doing and suggested Moses get some help. In Devarim, we read that the spies returned from their mission with a positive report, and because the people complained miserably, that they are given a 40-year wandering sentence. This drastically differs from the Numbers version, where because of the spies' negative report and pessimism, the Israelites are destined to wander for 40 years, relating to the 40 days of spying. The most surprising contradiction can be found in the explanation of why Moses is not allowed to enter the Promised Land. We read in the book of Numbers that God punishes Moses by denying him entrance to the land because he disobeys God in striking the rock. In Deuteronomy, we read, "The Lord was wrathful with me on your account and would not listen to me. The Lord said, 'Go up to the summit of Pisgah and gaze about. Look at it well, for you shall not go across the Jordan.'" It is clear in the book of Deuteronomy that the decision to restrict Moses from crossing the Jordan is not here, as it says, because of something Moses did, but rather because of what the people did. Great scholars struggle to make sense of these contradictions. I offer to you my interpretation on the difficulty with the text. The book of Deuteronomy is Moses' personal take on the wandering through the desert. In this retelling, Moses finally gets his turn to reflect on his experience as a leader and being the mouthpiece of God. The language in this book is dramatically different than the other books of the Torah. So while the key outcomes and the infrastructure really remains the same, Moses' version of the story differs in its details. We are privileged, and I think even relieved to read of the frustration that Moses encountered. All through our reading of the journey from Egypt, we searched for some expression or reaction. We viewed Moses as superhuman. Here, in this book, we finally see his humanity by way of his struggle, and we can personally relate with the great prophet. This is a very real part of Torah. It's not high and lofty with materially seeming anachronistic, but rather it's emotional and even edgy. We learn that even Moses, often regarded as the greatest prophet of all time, struggled in his leadership role in understanding some of God's decisions, and he didn't like it. Deuteronomy as a retelling also has an important role. Not simply a carbon copy of Wanderings, it offers us new insight. Like the emphasis we place on certain details when we retell the events and stories of our day, Deuteronomy effectively captures a unique mood, a specific agenda, and complements the fundamental story. It adds a depth to the text we would otherwise miss. In conclusion, retelling our stories keeps them a part of today and a part of us in the future, and it often just makes us feel good. Each new experience yearns to be shared with others through the act of retelling. Retelling our stories is a tremendous gift of connection that we share with those who are willing to listen. On this Shabbat, when we begin the book of Deuteronomy, the book of retelling, let us retell and recall the richness of our collective personal stories and actively weave them together into the tapestry of our lives. Shabbat Shalom.